you! Don't watch that! Watch this! This is the heavy, heavy monster sound! The nuttiest sound around! So if you're coming off the street and you're beginning to feel the heat, well, listen, Buster, you better start to move your feet to the...
The views expressed on the Final Straw Radio do not necessarily reflect those of Asheville FM, Friends of Community Radio, or any of the affiliate radio stations airing the show. From the studios of Asheville FM, 103.3 FM in Asheville, North Carolina, this is The Final Straw, and I'm William Goodenough. The show will later be archived at thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org, and you can email us with questions or suggestions at thefinalstrawradio@riseup.net. Also, if you're interested in rebroadcasting any episode or segment of the show, you're free to do so. Just send us an email if you choose to do it. If you'd like, you can send us letters at The Final Straw, care of Asheville FM, 864 Haywood Road, Asheville, North Carolina, 28806. The show is brought to you by Firestorm Books and Coffee. Located at 610 Haywood Road, Firestorm Books and Coffee is a worker-owned cooperative in Asheville specializing in offbeat, underground, and independent literature. You can find a sample of Firestorm's catalog of books and zines, plus a full calendar of events, at their website, firestorm.coop.
This week we feature two segments. The first is a roundtable discussion with producers from various audio projects around North America that focus on prisoner struggles and amplifying incarcerated voices. In the chat, you'll hear from me, as well as two producers from the Prison Radio Show on CFRC in Kingston, Ontario, a producer of the Prison Radio Show on CKUT at McGill University in Montreal, Quebec, and a producer of the June 11th audio series released this last year and revving up to mark the day in solidarity with Marius Mason and other long-term anarchist and ecological prisoners. The second conversation is an update from Walid Zazai, the 24-year-old Afghani man being held on Manus Island off the coast of Papua New Guinea. Walid has been in detention for 4 years now, awaiting resettlement at the pleasure of the government of Australia. We spoke with Walid 2 weeks ago, and 1 week ago, the Manus Regional Processing Centre was raided by law enforcement from the PNG, where he had been living with roughly 450 other refugees in protest of their long-time lack of freedom of movement and the violence they feared from PNG security forces in the first place, as well as the locals on the island. More coverage of the struggle of immigrants against Australian border authorities and other updates from the Oceania region can be found on the long-running Anarchist radio show based there, Subversion 1312. Subversion 1312 is also a recently added member of the Channel Zero network of Anarchist podcasts. Speaking of which, here's a little jingle from one of our audio comrades.
You're listening to Dissident Island Radio.
Live every first and third Friday of the month at 9 p.m. GMT.
Check out www.dissidentisland.org for downloads and more.
If you're in the Asheville area today at 5 p.m. at Firestorm Books and Coffee, Blue Ridge ABC will be hosting its monthly letter writing session, where you can swing by, find out about political prisoners in the U.S., write to some with upcoming birthdays, and meet other local radicals. After that, tonight at 8 p.m. at Lazy Diamond, 98A in North Lexington Avenue in downtown, comrades will be hosting a Radical Trivia Night to benefit the second Asheville, Carolina Anarchist Book Fair, or ACAB, planned for this summer. Alone or in teams, you are invited to test your wits on subjects of Black liberation, anarchist history, queer resistance, and more. There will be a cash prize available for the winning team or individual. Note that the Lazy Diamond is a bar, and it is 21 and up.
But first, here are some words from anarchist prisoner Sean Swain.
What you say, what you say, what you say, what? we're back to another holiday season. We have somehow survived another Thanksgiving, which, given the actual conduct of the pilgrims and their kids, ought to be called Thanks-taking rather than Thanksgiving. Or, even more accurately, should be called, we're going to take all your shit and then kill you anyway. Problem is, those little boxes on the calendar won't easily hold a holiday called that. So we go with the euphemism, Thanksgiving. Anyway, we're past Thanksgiving, and we're on our way to another Christmas season. To be honest, last year I never thought we'd get here. I was certain that our first orange president, orange really is the new black, would manage to so thoroughly wreck civilization that we'd all be back to tribal life and cooking our food over open fires. I was so confident that I bet Bursts $5 that civilization wouldn't last. He thought the joke was on me, because if I won the bet, the money would be useless. What he doesn't realize is that the joke is on him. I'm going to pay him in U.S. currency, which means the money is useless. At any rate, we drag our carcasses through another season of excessive eating and drinking, punctuated by orgasmic fits of consumer spending and the subsequent long-term debt. We surround ourselves with really annoying people who swear they're related to us in some way. And we typically experience short periods of extremely heightened panic and distress in what seems to otherwise be a vast and endless sea of hopelessness and immiseration. In this way, it seems to me, the experience of surviving the holiday season is a lot like war. Now, I've never actually been to a real war, but I read George Orwell's accounts of the Spanish Civil War, as well as dozens of descriptions of personal experiences in the Vietnam War, the Korean War, and World War II. They all seem to have a kind of pattern to them. Most of the time, in a war situation, the combatants experience lethargy and boredom. There is a general tedium, cleaning rifles and marching from place to place, existing on little sleep, a sense that the mundane will go on forever and ever. And this intolerable existence is interrupted on occasion by overwhelming chaos as battle erupts, with explosions and bullets flying and death everywhere. Right, just like the holiday season. I mean, okay, maybe not the explosions and bullets. I suppose it all depends on how drunk your family gets. But really, it's the same pattern surviving the holidays. You have this unendurably long period of preparation that is mind-bendingly stressful. And then there are the actual battles, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. In between them, you find yourself scrambling in preparation. Sure, you're not sewing up bullet wounds with a $1 sewing kit. Well, again, depends on how drunk your family gets. But what we experience is still trauma. Stress, anxiety, self-loathing, depression, trauma. This time of year really makes you want to deck the halls. I don't even know the halls. They may be a warm and loving family, the halls. But by the time these god-awful holidays roll around, I feel like hitting somebody. Might as well be the halls. Hope they don't press charges. So why do we do this to ourselves? It seems to me that what we really have is a fabricated excuse to cause all of us to go out and spend money in a big frenzied flurry. Someone somewhere managed to create in us this sense that we have an obligation, a responsibility, to contribute to this social and cultural spectacle. We feel like we've been drafted. We think we have no choice, so we participate. We fling around cash and credit cards for obscene piles of food and decorations and new electronics, and then we dig ourselves into such a hole that we'll have to spend the next year struggling to get out. And so we return to life dragging stones up the side of the pyramid, another year of drudgery and slavitude. What do I know? But I think there's a healthier approach, a liberatory approach to the holidays. I think we have to start by burning down the mall. It doesn't matter which one. Any one will do. It's not easy with the modern fire safety and the sprinkler systems, so you have to start someplace really flammable. A bookstore if your mall still has one. Maybe a clothing store. Go to a dressing room with expensive designers and a book of matches. You have to really get it burning fast. If you can get the acoustic ceiling tiles to light, you're probably home free. In order to get away with it, dress up as Santa Claus and have a couple dozen friends stroll around the food court dressed just like you. That way, when the running, screaming mobs hit the exits, you can blend right in with the other Santas. If you ever have a trial, pack the courtroom with Santas. That way, in the middle of the proceedings, one Santa stands and confesses, followed by another and another. And they all begin arguing over who really set the fire. A jury can't possibly convict you. I say we spend this holiday season stress-free for a change, roasting chestnuts over an open fire. That means two things. Wouldn't it be awesome if astronauts at the International Space Station could see fires of 1 million balls burning at the same all over the world? Our collective liberation might just start with a holiday trip to the mall. Ho, 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 you capitalist motherfucker. Happy holidays. This is Anarchist prisoner Sean Swain from War and Corruption in Lebanon, Ohio. If you're dressed as Santa and heading to the mall, you are the resistance.
You can write to Sean Swain at Sean Swain 243-205 Warren CI P.O. Box 120 5787 State Route 63 Lebanon, Ohio 45036. Updates on his situation and more writings by Sean can be found at seanswain.org.
So you're listening to an informal conversation between people who are involved in a few different prison radio projects in North America, or prison-related audio projects based out of North America. Well, first off, I'm Burst. I'm involved in the Final Straw Radio out of North Carolina. But I wonder if folks wouldn't please introduce themselves and say what their projects are.
I'm Virginia. I work on the prison radio show in Montreal.
My name's Rico. I work on the CFRC prison radio show in Kingston.
My name's Erica. I work on June 11th, the International Day of Solidarity with long-term anarchist prisoners.
My name's Alex. I'm an occasional contributor to the CFRC prison radio show.
Would you all say a few words about what sort of work your projects do and how your projects relate to prisoners? Like, do you have co-contributors, or do they help format the show, or are they just subject matter?
So in Montreal, right now, we have one inside correspondent. His name is Mutia Jamua-Sabro. He's in prison in Pennsylvania. He got a life sentence as a 17-year-old and has been doing a lot of advocacy ever since around folks sentenced to life who are kids. And he calls in every once in a while and gives us a long segment, and we air those. We also had an inside correspondent named Chaz Ransom, who was in prison in New York State, who's also a lifer, and he would contribute content by sending letters to us, and we'd read them out on air. He just got released, so we're hoping he can get involved on the outside, but we'll see. And we just managed to do a really long interview with Jalil Muntakim, who's also in prison in New York State, and we'll see if any correspondence type stuff comes out of that. But in general, the show is organized by 3 or 4 folks on the outside. And we have a phone line that prisoners can call at the station and leave messages for us if they want to. And we accept letters. We'll read letters out on the air and things like that. And we try and interview mostly people who have either done time or are in the process of doing time, or people who do a lot of support for people who are doing time. And time all across the spectrum, so people doing time in the criminal system, people doing time in the immigration system. We're pretty open to collaborating with anyone who has pretty broad definitions of doing time. We've also talked a lot about expanding that into mental hospital type situations, like folks who are in lockdown in shitty places like that. So I don't think we've actually acted on that yet, but we've talked a lot about that. So confinement writ broadly is kind of the focus of the show, and a lot of people who listen to our show are actually incarcerated themselves. Our radio station can send a signal that goes into a bunch of different prisons. There's a couple prisons off the island of Montreal that can hear us. There's some prisons in northern New York State that can hear us. So we sort of end up with contributions also just through people who listen to the show, who give us feedback and thoughts on what they want to hear.
Can I ask a quick question? The people that are currently incarcerated that you get or a number of the people that you get contributions from who are currently incarcerated are within the United States. Is it harder to get word from prisoners directly in Canadian prisons, or is it what sort of makes it so that y'all focus in that way on that topic?
I think on some level it's a little bit riskier for folks who are within our listening range to be contributing regularly. So Muti isn't, like, you can't hear our show in Pennsylvania. So I think it's, like, not super risky for him to put his name on air and, like, put his voice out there and stuff. But it can be risky for people to get involved in media projects, especially in the Canadian system. It seems like Canadian prison officials really don't like it when prisoners talk to the media. They don't like letting the media into the prison. I've heard stories of prisoners who were in touch with news stations who wanted to do specials on them, and the prison administration was like, absolutely no, we won't let you do that. So yeah, it just seems like slightly harder to get people's voices out of the Canadian system in some ways. I wonder if that's because that system is smaller and it's easier for the admin to just like crack down on everybody.
We have 6 federal prisons within the listening range of CFRC in Kingston. And I believe our signal also reaches Cape Vincent Correctional in upstate New York and a provincial jail. So we do try to sort of tailor the show for prisoner listeners. And so we try to, you know, as much as engagement as we can sort of get. And of course we do get some interference with that from prison officials from time to time. But yeah, definitely the show is tailored to amplify those voices and share information between institutions because it is probably the least censored form of communication that exists in terms of like compared to letters or visits or phone calls. Radio is a fairly uncontrolled medium to share information, and also once a month we do like a show that's explicitly for call-ins, song requests, and messages and stuff like that. And so it really just depends on sort of how strong our connections are locally, and that does ebb and flow and sort of also relate to what's going on inside and how much people are interested in reaching out and sharing their stories. So like every year we do a Prisoners Justice Day special broadcast, which is a really important day of remembrance of prisoners who have died in prisons. And it's sort of a day of protest as well against kinds of conditions that are killing people. And around that time, we always get like a big flood of information and song requests and people's families calling from Toronto and Kingston and other places where they are. So certainly, like, we know people are listening, but the degree of participation tends to sort of be related to how much people have to say and how much they want to engage.
We've also on occasion had people in prison who were able to call and either record something or call in and have them speak directly on the radio, which is nice for people to be able to communicate directly with other prisoners in that way.
And maybe, I don't know if this is a difference between Canada and the US, but for phone calling from federal prisons, like you have to have pre-clearance like before someone can dial that number. So that, unlike in like a provincial jail, you can kind of call anyone, collect. It can be pretty hard to set that up. It's very controlled.
So June 11th is a little bit different. It's been around as a day of solidarity for a number of years in a few different manifestations. But last year was the first year that we did this interview project. So we did, I think, 8 or 9 interviews in the months leading up to June 11th with people in prison, people who were formerly incarcerated, and then supporters of people who are still incarcerated or have just been doing that work for a long time. So we sort of covered all of those parts of it. Like Rico mentioned, getting calls with prisoners can be hard. So we go through like support networks, and that's how we found a lot of our contacts for those interviews. And those were really focused around what prisoner support has looked like for them, and how it can be better, and how June 11th can contribute to that, and like lessons that we've learned. And another cool thing about last year is that there were a handful of like music project contributions to June 11th, more so than there had been. There was like a benefit CD that came out of a few places. So there's kind of like a whole spectrum there of new contributions to June 11th, and also all the interviews were transcribed so that they could be sent into prisoners, since just that audio on the internet isn't accessible to people in prison. But hopefully some of those transcripts did get inside.
And we re-aired one of your interviews on our show, so hopefully other radio shows are picking up the audio too.
Yeah.
Same.
That's awesome. Well, okay, so just for clarity, our project, The Final Straw, also, we have like a weekly contribution from Sean Swain, who's a prisoner in the state of Ohio, who calls out, and occasionally folks associated mostly with the Anarchist Black Cross, I guess, nebulous cloud of activists around North America have gotten us into contact with prisoners in various parts of the country to hear their voices. But frequently we make announcements about people's current situations or talk to activists on the outside about either specific prisoners or uprisings or struggles that are going on the inside. Does anyone have any thoughts or responses to the question of, like, is there something special about the human voice or anything that's particularly, like, important about getting prisoners' actual voices out there? Do you make a choice when you have the two options of a kind of crappy recording of a prisoner through the system versus something that's more clear that someone else could read?
I would rather use voices of folks inside. Like, when I've had folks call in before, but like they're calling in to a phone that's not the station phone, and I'm just putting them on speakerphone and putting a recorder up next to the phone, and the audio quality is not amazing, but having people be able to say things in their own voice feels pretty important. Certainly when we were doing this process of interviewing Jaleel, it felt really important to be getting his voice out of that prison. I feel like so many folks have done a lot of support for him over the years, and people on the outside were telling me, like, oh, if you could get him to read his own poetry, which wasn't possible in the end, like, it would be great to have him reading his own poetry in his own voice, because so many people have, like, read his poetry on the outside as part of, like, awareness-raising campaigns for him. So it does feel important to people to, like, hear the voices of folks who are locked up. And it feels important to be able to, like, bring those voices into other prisons, because there is so much restricted communication between people who are currently incarcerated.
In our project, I can think of a few examples where we weren't able to get the voices of the people who we were having the show on actually out there. Like, years ago, we interviewed the mother of Connor Stevens, who's one of the Cleveland Four, about her son's case. And that was pretty moving, hearing her, like, talk about his case and also share some of his writings, and share some of her experiences of his experiences on the inside. And also, a few years back, a friend was able to record a conversation with Ariana, the daughter of Marius Mason, who's one of the main June 11th prisoners, and having that person just share experiences, like, the emotion just travels through the voice. And I think that there's something, not to sound like a hipster about audio stuff, but I think there's something that definitely is, like, touching, and you can't ignore the sound of, like, someone who actually loves someone else expressing disdain, like fear and pain and loss, and also appreciation.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I found really moving about these June 11th interviews. Hopefully you can't tell in the recordings, but there are definitely times that we were, like, tearing up hearing these people talk about some of their best friends and their family and their loved ones. And I think that you can't really get that any other way.
I just never feel like I could do justice to someone else's words, like, and sometimes it's the only option available. But even in a basic, like, on our monthly calls from home, like, if somebody's saying, like, I love you and I miss you, if that's the person, like, that's someone in prison who's hearing, ideally, a family member or a loved one say that to them, like, I could never do justice to that sort of emotional sort of thing that happens when someone does that. So that's always our first preference, even if it's poor quality.
Yeah, it feels like a really important way of battling the alienation that is prisons, no matter what someone's in for. The fact is they're being withdrawn from their natural environment, from their community of loved ones. And I think, like, Sean Swain, I think, put it in a conversation on prison radio on CKUT once, saying that it was like being outside of the bars for 5 minutes a week, basically. And it was pretty, like, moving for me to hear that I could contribute to that sort of thing.
Yeah, the prison radio show had an inside correspondent for years named Pete Collins, and I think some of the I don't know, when he died, there were, like, a ton of people who got together for all the different services for him in a bunch of different cities across Canada, and a lot of the ways that people had interacted with him were through his, like, radio correspondence. Like, getting to hear his voice, putting his voice up on YouTube after it had been on the radio. It was like a really good way for folks on the outside to hear about him and hear about his struggles and stuff.
It would feel a bit wrong not to mention the work that Noel Hanrahan's done over the years with prison radio, in particular with the voice of Mumia Abu Jamal, who was a correspondent for NPR, and was on the inside too, but was a journalist before he went in, and his voice, I know, is does audio correspondences getting rebroadcast on NPR and on Pacifica stations, on Democracy Now!, on the internet. He's got just such a powerful voice that his writing's amazing, but it can't possibly demonstrate the depth of his words. That was a huge influence for me getting into doing this sort of work. Do y'all have any influences that specifically prompted you into wanting to do it, whether it be a personal interaction or another project?
I think for me it was a very compelling way to communicate across prison walls, and one of the more direct ways that we have at our disposal. And I have heard from people just that they appreciate being able to hear that and hear either people's voices from the inside, or appreciating the Prisoner Justice Day broadcast of hours of messages and music from loved ones and things like that. Yeah, I'm glad to be able to take part in that.
Yeah, we certainly borrow a lot of audio from Noel and folks at Prison Radio. It's great that they do what they do. I would also shout out the person who was doing prison radio in Montreal before I started doing it. She taught me everything I know about radio stuff and was a pretty amazing mentor in terms of this show is for folks on the inside, and you're going to use this show to amplify voices of folks on the inside, and giving me some tips and tricks about how to do that. She's super solid, and she ran that show for a long time before she handed it off to me and the folks who do it now.
Yeah, I would similarly say that, in some of the outside organizing, non-radio organizing that I've been involved with, we always used sort of that relationship with the prison radio show in town before I got involved to help communicate and have relationships with prisoners around Prisoners Justice Day and things like that, and it was really an invaluable resource, and so people for years put the work in to build those relationships and set up that infrastructure. I've only been involved for a short time. The other thing that I think of sometimes is some of the hip hop I used to listen to, extensively use Mumia Abu Jamal's samples and other people, and I always thought that was a really interesting way to spread those ideas, and we've done a little bit of that too, where we've had a couple local musicians sort of pair up with one or two prisoners that we were in touch with and do some kind of musical and spoken word kind of stuff with some of the phone calls, and it's been a really interesting way to kind of share those words at public events and have a kind of broader and more diverse way of kind of connecting with people.
For me, I don't think it was any one particular project that inspired me. I'm sure other people involved in June 11th have their own things that have inspired them, but definitely just doing this limited series of interviews has made me appreciate even more the work that y'all and so many other people do, making this happen weekly or monthly. It's a lot of work, and it's really impressive that people have been so reliable and consistent in doing that.
A really situational question that wouldn't apply to many of the listeners, but I wonder if anyone has any suggestions to someone who's maybe already on the road to producing some sort of audio and they want to incorporate the words of prisoners in their own voices. Are there things we can talk about on this recording that would be helpful towards approaching that, either trying to build a relationship or working on getting audio? Maybe that's not an appropriate question for...
No, I think I have a few thoughts. Yeah, one of them is you are building a relationship. I think sometimes media work can be super exploitative, especially of folks on the inside. And folks on the inside have things they need help with and reasons why they want to be in contact with the media. And so being clear on on ways you can help people, which can really only happen through being willing to build a relationship with people and not just relate to something as like a one-off interview or like you get your content for your show and you move on. Like, it feels really important to me to be also really clear with people about what and how your outlet can be useful for them and what they're trying to do, and keep that at the center of what you're doing.
Yeah, so one thing that we do to make contact is just regularly reading the newspaper, and so we live in a prison town, and so sometimes local prisoners will write letters to the editor or be speaking to the media on behalf of some kind of like action or campaign on the inside, and so we try to make sure to write letters to those people, and it's been a pretty successful way to make contact. And sometimes people are just on pen pal sites too, and looking for people to correspond with, and just being really upfront about why you're reaching out and what you'd like to do from the beginning, and honest about your intentions, I think goes a long way, and following through with the things that you're offering.
I think that our project tends to find or get in contact with prisoners by soliciting people that are already doing support for various prison projects. So if we hear about something on one of the news sites, like it's going down, for instance, or through more mainstream media, then we'll seek out comrades that might be organizing in the area and see if they have any other words that they can share about what's going on, or ways of getting in touch with and amplifying the voices of the people that are on the inside, which can feel a little bit like fire truck chasing sometimes. Like, oh, there's a riot over there. run, get your mic. But
yeah, we did a lot of that too, finding, support people and support crews who are already working with people and going through them, because they might already have their phone number approved, to get calls from them. And so we're hoping to do this again next year, and I think that will be even more important this year, kind of facilitating that through support crews, especially. We would like to do maybe some more international interviews, and that's a little bit trickier, with language barriers and things like that, but that's something that we're interested in exploring.
If somebody's listening to this, and in terms of Erica and the June 11th audio crew, how should they get a hold of you and start that conversation?
Yeah, you can email us at June 11th, with a TH at the end, at riseup.net, and let us know if you have any ideas for good interviews, either people in prison or supporters, former prisoners, and we can talk about it. You can listen to the interviews from last year at our website, june11.org.
Do the folks at CFRC want to talk about how to get in contact if folks have resources they might want to toss your way or questions? And where can they listen to your audio also?
There's a number of ways. There's an email address, cfrcprisonradio@riseup.net. We also archive all of our stuff at cfrcprisonradio.wordpress.com. And we have a phone number, which is 613-329-2693.
For people that aren't in Canada, what's the nation code?
1.
Oh, it is.
+1, yeah, it's the
Plus
same.
one, same as US? I didn't know that.
And then our mailing address is CPR, care of CFRC, Lower Carruthers Hall, Queen's University, Kingston, Ontario, Canada, and the postal code is K as in Kilo, 7, L as in Lima, 3, N as in November, 6, and we welcome letters. We always respond to them from anywhere.
I'm so impressed. I do not have our address memorized. I'm trying to think about our address memorized. You can get in touch with the Prison Radio Show in Montreal through our email address. We're at prison@ckut.ca. Our show is archived both on CKUT's website, and you can listen to it live internationally on our website, which is ckut.ca. Their archives are a bit tricky to use, and shows disappear after 3 or 4 months, so we also archive our show on our own blog, which is prisonradioshow.wordpress.com.
Does anybody want to, since the mic's running, pick each other's brains about anything? Do you have any questions or any, I noticed you did this. I thought that was pretty cool. What about that? It's okay if not. I'm going to take that as a no. Oh. I can edit out that I'm going to take that as a no.
No, I don't have any.
Oh. Alex, do you have something you want to talk to the class about?
No.
Okay. No. I'm just keeping busy. All right, thank you so much, all of you, for taking the time to do this and letting me corral you in this way. And I hope we keep in touch and continue working together.
Sounds good. Thanks for all the stuff you did
Thank
first.
2 weeks ago, we spoke with Walid Zazai, a 24-year-old man from Afghanistan who was seeking asylum in Australia. While in transit to Australia 4 years ago, Walid was intercepted. And 2 weeks ago, when we spoke with him, he was being held on behalf of the Australian government at the Manus Regional Processing Centre, or MRPC, by a private corporation on the Papua New Guinean island of Manus. On October 31st, the MRPC was closed by the Australian government, but the initially 700 men held there refused to be moved to another facility in hopes of being resettled in Australia, where they sought refuge. And to avoid violence, they had reason to fear from Papuan residents on Manus and the PNG security forces. When we spoke with Walid, he and the remaining 450 men had been days running out of food, collecting and drinking rainwater, and without medical care. The United Nations Human Rights Commission was warning of an impending human rights catastrophe as the men on Manus awaited a looming assault by the PNG security forces. This assault came on November 23rd, when all the men were removed from MRPC, hundreds by force. So we catch up with Walid Zazai over a week later, after the forced relocation, to hear his perspectives. Walid, thank you so much for taking the time and effort to chat with us.
Hello everyone, it's my pleasure, and thank you so much to you for giving me time to share my words with the world. Thank you so much for that.
Can you please tell us what happened in the run-up to and during the eviction?
Yeah, actually the eviction, as I would say, the by force removing from the naval-based detention center to the new detention centers in the town actually started on the 23rd of November in early morning, when the police and the PNG immigration storm into the compound and start yelling, abusing and shouting in the speakers to move, and use disrespectful words towards refugees and asylum seekers. And they start trashing and destroying our property. For the whole day they were doing it at afternoon time, around about 1 or 2 p.m. They went to my compound, so when they saw there are about 40-50 guys, so they have sealed the compound, they locked the door and start pushing and dragging those guys and beating them. So they started from there on that day to move us by force to the centers in the town. So about 50 guys on the first day, they have been forced out to the new centers on 23rd of November. Yeah, they beat them, then dragged them onto the buses and took them to the new centers. Then on the second day, they came again at around about 7 a.m. in the morning. Yeah, coming this time we can see steel rods and big sticks in the hands of PNG immigration and the police, and they start again yelling at us, abusing at us, and using disrespectful words towards us, telling us you guys should move to the new centers, there is everything for you and everything is ready. We know from here they got that messages from Australian border force. Australian immigration told them to tell us their thing, because that everything was not the truth. They were lying to us just to move us from their place to the new places which are still under construction, and nothing has been ready here. So yeah, and the second day they did the same thing, and they start beating guys in the morning at around about 7:30 or 8 a.m. So this time they were beating with the rods, steel rods and big sticks. Yeah, many of you have seen the wounds and the injured guys' pictures. Many of us have been beaten very brutally. So then some of the guys were scared. They got on the bus and came to the new centers, and many of us have been forced by police and dragged by them on to the buses, and they brought us to the new centers. So when we arrived to the new centers, where I am, it's called West Center, West Refugee Transit Center. When I arrived here, I can see that the construction was continuing and it still continue. Yeah, there is lack of water, clean water, no water in the showers most of the time, and the power is coming and going. It's like blackout for the whole day. So it's not ready. This construction is still ready, and there is nothing, no activities here. There is no playground or no gym. Even there is no mess for eating breakfast, lunch, or dinner. They just give us the meals in a small plastic box, which is very little in quantity. Yeah, so there is nothing ready here. They were lying to us that everything is ready there and we should move there. Like they have told us that we will get 100 kina allowance per week, but we haven't got that yet as well. We haven't got telephones as well to call our families. There are lots of problems that should be solved, and they have told us in the old detention center that everything is ready there. They are waiting for you guys. So when we came here, there is nothing. Yeah, that detention and where we were resisting peacefully, that was nice from here.
Images were released with many people wounded. What sorts of force was used to evict people from the MRPC, and have people received necessary medical aid?
Yeah, there were lots of guys who have been beaten by the immigration and the PNG police. Yeah, they use metal bars, big sticks, and everything like coming into their hands. They could beat us, even they punch us, they kick us. They use everything they can use. So yeah, we are so thankful that they don't have guns. Even if they have guns, they would shoot us. Yeah. First of all, when we arrived here, I can see, and everyone can see, like my personal experience, I have seen the injured guys who have been beaten. There were no treatment for them. They were laying on the ground and there were nothing.
Who's responsible for the care that you're receiving or not receiving?
Yeah, Australia is responsible. The HMS is responsible to give us medical treatment, but there was no one in there. There we can see only PNG officials. They couldn't give us medical treatment because there's nothing in their hand, and every time they're getting orders from ABF, the Australian Border Force, and follow them.
Where were you moved to, and what are the facilities there like? How many people are with you, and are they the same men who were with you at MRPC?
Where I have been moved, it's called West Transit Refugee Center. It's not completed yet. The construction is still continue. It is blackout most of the time, and there's no water in the shower for most of the times. And there are other lots of problems in here. Like I have told you, we have no mess to eat. The 3 meals a day, we just give a small box, plastic box, and we have a little bit of rice and a piece of meat. So yeah, there are lots of problems in here. And we are about 140 guys in that center, and they said that the guys in Port Moresby who are there for medical treatment, some of them will come to this center and some of them will go to the east. So total will be here about 240, they are saying. So we'll see how many will end up in this center. No, we are all have been divided into 3 different compounds. Yeah, I have some of the friends who are there with me and still here with me, but not all of them. Yeah.
Médecins Sans Frontières, or MSF, or in English, Doctors Without Borders, has been present on Manus and recently moved to Port Moresby, the capital of PNG, to check in on the psychological needs of the traumatized refugees there.
Yeah, MSF or the Doctors Without Borders were here, and they treat some of the guys who are injured or like not feeling well and were sick, but that was not enough. So they went back, and I hope they will come with more doctors like psychologists, because refugees are traumatized and have mental problems and have dental problems. So we are not getting proper treatment from HMS and from other companies that got contract to look after us. So yeah, they have said that we will back, when we don't know when they will back uh, or not. But most of the guys have been traumatized and are mentally sick and need an urgent medical treatment.
Meanwhile, I've heard word that local authorities there have been taking food and water from refugees to sell to the local population. Have you heard of this happening?
Yeah, I have heard about that from many guys here, that the locals are taking our food outside. They are hiding from us, or they're taking our food outside, and we can't tell them anything because it's their land, their place. If we tell them anything, I want to ask them anything, they just tell us this is our land, what we want, we will do. So yeah, it's very hard, and we are very scared from them.
Do you know what plans the authorities have for all of you at West and the other facilities? Is there any sign of actually being processed or settled anywhere?
No, we don't know what the authorities have planned for us. Is there any plan, or there is nothing planned, or there is plan to leave us in PNG or send us to USA or to New Zealand maybe? So we don't know that, but they are saying that some of us will go to USA, as they have announced that some of the refugees from Nauru will soon end up in USA, maybe in January. So we don't know how many will go from Manus, or when they will go, and when US will say enough. Because Australia has said that we will consider other resettlement deal after the US deal is finalized. So we hope that USA take most of us or all of us, so we can get freedom in a safe country, in a safe place.
The Iranian journalist Behrouz Bouchani is also being held on Manus and has reported on the psychological effects of the violence of authorities towards refugees at MRPC. Can you talk about these effects as you've experienced or witnessed in others held captive with you?
Yeah, I have experienced, I have seen, I have been through that. I would say it was really, really a scary moment of my life, when they came with the steel bars and big stick and started beating us, yelling at us, abusing us, using disrespectful words. Moo, moo. I still have nightmares of that, when police and immigration were shouting in front of us and pushing us, kicking us, punching us. That move, move, you are illegal in this detention center, you should move to the town centers. There is everything for you guys. And they were telling too much stuff. So yeah, it was really scary, and it gave us lots of mental problems to most of our guys. So yeah, it was quite a really scary experience that I had in my life.
Another point that Mr. Bouchani made was that he had been personally targeted for repression by authorities for reporting on the BBC, UK Guardian, and other outlets about what's going on in Manus. Have you had any response, positive or negative, about getting your voice out there on your experience?
Yeah, the police arrested Behrouz Bichani when we were there on the 23rd of November, and he have said to us, he have told us that, yeah, police have accused him and have told him that you are the guy who are damaged our reputation in the world, and he Behrouz have told them that, yeah, you guys are doing inhuman things, it's not humanity, you are damaging your reputation by yourself, you should do and show humanity and compassion towards refugees. So yeah, so no, personally I haven't get anything from them, or I haven't been arrested or I haven't been told anything like that that Behruz have been experienced of.
The PNG government decided that detaining people in the detention camp, MRPC, was an unconstitutional holding of free people. How, then, can the PNG government move you to these new camps after the closing of the MRPC?
Yeah, we have already raised this question in a letter that we have wrote to all PNG authorities in October, and that how it is legal to put us in the new centers in the town and illegal in the center in naval base in Lumbrum. So like we have asked that it's the PNG constitution is saying that detaining of innocent people in PNG is illegal. So where they come from, they should go back there. That was their decision. So now the same judge have said that no, we guys should move to the to the centers in the town, which are open centers, and everything is up there, and we are legal there. So we don't know how what this kind of law is and how it's changed every day. So it's all like in the hand of Australian government. They are what they want they can do by using PNG hands. So we are still waiting for that answer. We haven't got that, and as you people know that we can't ask for justice, we can't ask for human rights, because then they blame us that look, they came us here and now they are making violence, blah blah blah. But we will be peaceful, but we will raising as we have raised before, and we'll still raise our voice for our human rights. Thank you.
Is there anything else you'd like to address in this interview?
Yeah, I would like to ask again. I have asked last time from international community that from the whole world that please help us and stand for us, stand for humanity, and show some compassion and humanity towards refugees on Manus Island. We need your help. We have been tortured for over 4 years by Australian and PNG governments. So save us our lives and help us to get us our freedom from the hard hands of Australian government and PNG government. We are normal human beings as you are. We all long for special smile, tender hands and soft lips. We all long for smiles. And we have families who are waiting for us for over 4 years. They need our help, they need our support. So please help us and stand for us. And we really appreciate it. And we are so thankful to those people who are standing for us and standing with us in these hard times of our lives. Please stand with us until we get a freedom in a safe country, in a safe place. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for taking the time to chat. We're going to close out the show today with a black metal track entitled Eat Shit and Live by the Vancouver-based black metal project Black Clothes from their November 2017 released album I Am Afraid to Die. Enjoy!
Eat shit and die, Ricky!
Eat shit and live, Bill.
Yeah, Bill, he's a little wet. Come on, Bill.
From the studios of Asheville FM, 103.3 FM in Asheville, North Carolina, this is The Final Straw, and I'm William Goodenough. The show will later be archived at thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org, and you can email us with questions or suggestions at thefinalstrawradio@riseup.net. Also, if you're interested in rebroadcasting any episode or segment of the show, you're free to do so. Just send us an email if you choose to do it. If you'd like, you can send us letters at The Final Straw, care of Asheville FM, 864 Haywood Road, Asheville, North Carolina, 28806.